Hello. Okay, so y'all, as we're getting ready to get started, I just want to welcome everyone. This is the CSW68 online session, and we are going to be covering our panel today, which is the sex workers' right to a resolution to poverty. I am Jenna Torres. I am going to be moderating this panel today. And our online discussion is about multimedia presentation. Will showcase sex workers' leadership across the globe to discuss the impact of the idea of sex work in their organizing and on women's rights and feminist movement and more. We will highlight the ways which sex workers create and maintain their own systems to harm reduction and discuss policy solutions for governments globally to collaborate with the infrastructure and make it sustainable and widely accessible for people in the sex industry. We connect our discussions to the CSW themes and are spanning across social protection systems for all women and combating poverty. And as these issues are essential to the survival of most marginalized sex workers. So I just want to introduce myself really, really quickly and say that I am Jenna Torres. I'm collaborating with Best Practices Policy Project. I also do organizing across Georgia, New York, around sex workers' rights. I'm a poet, I'm a mama of four, and I am really, really excited to be here in collaboration with all the wonderful panelists that we have today. And so I am going to pass it to Zee to introduce themselves, and you can pass it to the next person after that. I'm complete.
Hey folks, I'm Zee and N'Jaila, and I am a consultant here at Best Practices. I am a writer and I am a fundraiser, yeah, I'm glad to be here, and I will pass it to Ava.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I don't know what time zone you're in, but it's 2 here. My name is Ava. I am a very long time sex worker, over 10, 15 years of work. I am also a core member of Philadelphia Project SAFE, which is a grassroots harm reduction collective made out of current or former sex workers and or current or former drug users. Additionally, I am a core member of Philadelphia's branch of the Red Umbrella Alliance. And I will jump over to Jay.
Thank you so much. My name is Jay. I'm a researcher advocate. I am here in solidarity with Best Policy Practices, but my organization's name is Liaison Consulting Services. I offer research support, advocacy, and edutainment in the form of public speaking at lectures, conferences, trainings, and summits. It was established in 2018. I work with industry leaders globally to serve the sexual health needs of sex workers. I've been a core member of Lysistrata since 2018, a foundational member of the Ruse Support Network. I've been a researcher with Hacking and Hustling since 2020, and I work in solidarity, of course, with Best Policy Practices Project, the Black Sex Workers Collective, the Dandelion Movement, New Moon Network, the BIPOC Collective, and the Ishtar Collective. And those are all of my affiliations. And I would like to pass it to, N'Jaila.
Hello, my name is N'Jaila. I'm the Executive Director of New Jersey Red Umbrella Alliance, and I want to thank you all for having me here. And we thank Best Practices Policy Project for being our mentors and supporters. New Jersey Red Umbrella Alliance is a collective of activists and allies. We are 100% sex worker led, and we advocate for the human and labor rights of sex workers. And our major focus is fighting for decriminalization. And we are also part of the Sex Worker Collective, who has been so instrumental in having sex worker voices be heard at this CSW. Is there anyone?
Yes, I just want to also stay on the call. There is Erika from Best Practices. They are the director of Best Practice Policy Project. If you want to say, hey, Erika.
Hello, everyone. I'm Erica. I'm just here observing. I'll be also in the chat if anyone have a question. I make sure I bring it to the panelists. Enjoy the session.
And we also have PJ on the line helping us with some technical stuff and in the chat. If PJ, you would like to say hey.
Hey, I did not take my quick pause yet, but I will be away for about 5 to 10 minutes. But I'm here with Erica, and we are co-directors of BPPP, and so great to be here.
Thank you so much, and I just love all the support that we get here on our virtual panels. So I'm gonna jump right in. I'm gonna start with our first question. You can feel free to answer it as it pertains to you, or you can pass. I'm also gonna put a circle flow in our chat so you know we can talk in order, and you can also pass on what you have heard. So the first question says, what role does work play in ensuring economic stability in communities that are often disenfranchised? And I will pass it to Zee, starting.
Hi, y'all. Zee and N'Jaila again. So I'll just jump into my answer. So sex work in itself contests the suggestion that sexual labor has no value, which is something that we've been taught both implicitly and explicitly, particularly if you are read as a woman or read as female. That is sex work is often played out as something that is harmful. No, the harm in sex work, the harm that comes with sex work is not inherent in sex work, but is a matter of policy that has targeted sex workers, but not just sex workers, because we don't exist in a vacuum. We come from multiply targeted communities. And so when sex workers are targeted, it also targets labor rights, it targets reproductive justice, um, it targets communities, it targets people who are non-white, people who are disabled, people who are trans. So when we engage in sex work, we find a way to navigate the systemic exclusion. We are not considered in welfare policy. We are not considered in labor law. Like labor law in the US is a joke. And as work becomes more and more precarious and exploitive, formal labor becomes more and more exploitive, our creation of a system, not just of work, but of existence that prioritizes our well-being and our ability to care for ourselves and develop our own infrastructure that can combat the harms that are perpetrated by the state, whether it is through criminalization of sex work directly or indirectly through the criminalization of our bodies. So sex work is a bulwark against just government targeting. Like money in capitalism is power, and if we can get the money for the labor that they say is not valuable, then that is a threat to the system. And that, I think, is one of many reasons why sex work is so heavily targeted and monitored worldwide.
Thank you, Zee. Would anybody else like to jump in? I put the circle flow in our chat.
Oh, I would love to. So what I think, to piggyback on some of the very excellent points that Zee has made, there are so many groups in around the world, but I can only speak to the experience in the United States, where we aren't guaranteed upward mobility no matter how much we try to invest in ourselves. I could use my life as an example. I am the daughter of immigrants who came to this country, and uh, even though they were what we would consider to be successful, that success did not guarantee my upward mobility in this country. And um, even though I was able to go to college, if I was not a sex worker, there is no way I could have had the money to actually support myself and pay for that education. And then after I graduated, I was told, well, getting a college education will ensure that you have a good salary. And then I found out, being a Black woman going into professional jobs, my starting salary was sometimes $20,000 to $30,000 less than my white counterparts. So the only way I could ever make up that gap was continuing sex work while doing that. And I'm from New Jersey, NJ. The average apartment went from, my first apartment in 2010 was $825 a month. That same apartment right now starts at $1,300 a month. So imagine you're entering an economy where, because of who you are, despite trying to get secondary education, despite having everything on paper that says that you should be able to thrive, you're not getting fairly compensated. And the only way I see for a lot of groups that are facing this kind of discrimination and this kind of like blackballing professionally is to compensate in what they call the black market economy, where you're doing something else on top of that. So I think a lot of times when we discuss sex work, we discuss it in an either or fashion, as in um, you know uh, we're working because certain doors and opportunities are closed to us, but sometimes even with those opportunities, we're still not going to be fairly compensated. So a lot of groups that are discriminated when it comes to their compensation, whether that be gender diverse people, people of color, indigenous people, uh, you know, people whose English is not their first language in this country, a lot of times they can fall into poverty simply because these opportunities that are presented as a way to climb the economic ladder are not real to us. They could be offered, but the compensation is never going to be equal. So for me, I feel that sex work was a way for a slice of economic justice for me to be able to make sure I have a living wage. I could not depend on a corporation or the government to do that. It was something that I had to do myself. And I feel if we want to have economic freedom, a lot of those uh, gateways that are keeping people in poverty, they're kept by people who are have so much interest vested in keeping certain people away from it, that even if you can access certain things, you're still not going to be fairly compensated. And I feel like with sex work, that gives people the opportunity to actually live in dignity, because you're creating an economic cushion that is not available to most people in this country.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody else want to hop in on this conversation before we move to the question?
Funny enough, this similar was not too long ago. I spoke at a college here in Philadelphia, and this was similar to one of the questions that was asked. And to piggyback off of Zee and N'Jaila, I am a child of one parent who was an immigrant. I am also a generational sex worker. So, and my mom had a well-paying job, but it didn't help. It didn't raising us. I have siblings. It was not feasible at all compared to, as mentioned with N'Jaila, her white counterparts. My mom worked with white people, and they made with the skill set my mom had in her field, plus her education background, she was still being paid less. I college educated, same thing. I come into these job feed markets and I'm offered pennies on the dollar compared to my white counterparts who less. It was a couple points I had brought up, talking about the complex role ensuring stability in the disenfranchised communities here, as a sex worker, and what talking about apartments. I live in Philadelphia, so one of the things we're unfortunately experiencing is rapid gentrification, which is leading to the unfortunate forceful removal of lower income and Black and brown people in Philadelphia because places are unaffordable. Rent skyrocketing, mortgage rates and property tax to the point they're unaffordable, unlivable, unrealistic. And one of the things I had brought up was survival strategies. Being sex work is, in some cases, sex work is a survival strategy for individuals who lack access to things. Not all of us can get an education or afford the education as others could. Food, housing, governments don't apartments when we're getting an apartment, landlord, property managers, they don't see my income, though I will have it in physical or in paper. Hey, I have X amount in the bank. Well, how do you get that money? Well, I got this money from shaking ass. They don't see or would even accept shaking ass as a form of income, though I have a substantial amount of money. They don't say, they see, again, sex work being considered valueless, us as valueless, especially when you're Black. You're definitely considered less than the value margin that a white or other person of color is considered. You're seeing less than, which there's a deeper conversation I could talk about that when it comes to how we're paid as Black sex workers, how I'm paid as a Black sex worker in comparison to a white sex worker. Autonomy and control. Oh Lord. I thought of like two things at once, and I was just like, they kind of crashed a bit. We definitely have more, even though again it's so weird when thinking of when thinking about us as sex workers, and how the outsiders think of us in this. And I guess again, it just returns back to talk of, or the speaking point of valueless. You know what, for the time being, I'm going to skip because I feel like I'm about to take up like an hour just talking about this. So I'm going to pause.
I'm excited for the excitement, and I can't wait for us to get through the rest of the panel. Jay, is there anything you would like to add for this conversation?
Yes, I would definitely like to thank my fellow panelists for highlighting some of the very things I was going to touch on. Number one, as a researcher, I am a non-degree holder. I do not have a degree. I was essentially recruited from the Center for Court Innovation and the New York City Department of Health, working with the CDC in my third year of college. And I did street-based survival sex work. I did BDSM work. I transitioned into BDSM work to support myself and my children through my education process, right? Like, so in that work, I would like to highlight two things: the economic disparities between white and Black and brown bodies in the industry is very real. As a woman of color, I definitely was not compensated the same way as my white counterparts who worked in BDSM. Our rates are posted plainly on platforms for all to see. And, you know, with a cursory look, one can see the disparities in pay even in the sex industry. But as a researcher, I do not have access to the same opportunities as my white counterparts, let alone similar compensation. As a non-degree holder, I have worked for PhD students. I have worked for principal investigators who knew literally absolutely nothing about the population we were researching, investigating, or sampling. And I'm hired as a consultant in research support services, from conceptualizing this research study project to disseminating. Where's the best place we're going to tell people about our findings? So why is it, if I'm qualified enough to do all parts of this research, am I not qualified to be hired on a full-time basis and compensated in the same way as my counterparts? Because I'm a non-degree holder, I'm a former sex worker, current former sex worker with a 24-page rap sheet. So how could I possibly be hired and compensated the same as someone else who went to college and didn't involve themselves in these sorts of activities? But the conundrum is, you're researching these activities with no prior knowledge of them, coming out of academia. Also, my baby is here, so I can't say certain keywords. Would you mind?
The lifestyles of grandparents and parents.
Right into my next sentence is that many sex workers, I can't say those keywords in front of my baby, but many sex workers are heads of households and primary providers for our families. It is the income that's derived from industry work that provides economic stability in disenfranchised communities, one household at a time. Proceeds of sex work have advanced individual education, as touched on by my co-panelists, provided means for financial investment, the purchase of property, the purchase of land, and the proceeds of those who are involved in the industry whose income is taxed within the industry supports the economic infrastructure of communities that are often disenfranchised. The sheer spending power of industry workers, when spent hyper locally on items such as groceries and household items, support the hyper local economic infrastructure, right? So like any other industry, sex work is work, and the labor from massage parlors, clubs, BDSM dungeons, many of us have our income taxed. That not only supports our local infrastructure, but our state and federal, as well as business infrastructure. Like, we invest in many types of businesses, from arts and crafts down to education companies, right? So like, the proceeds of sex work support the economic infrastructure like any other economy or industry, excuse me.
Awesome. So thank you so much for having insight on that. The only other thing that I would add was that those who are disabled, or those who have a very intense schedule, as far as, like, I'm also a mom, so I can't just pick a 9 to 5 that does not work for my life. Sex work is the flexibility that gives me the ability to show up for my children the way that I want to, and also be able to provide for them. And not to mention, I can't tell you day to day how my body is going to respond to all of the things that I'm living with. And so it's really, really hard to be as consistent with these organizations or with your job to be able to discuss those things. And I think that sex work gives you the most amount of flexibility within how you use your time and how you show up. So thank you so much for answering that question. I'm going to move on to the second question, which is, what are the policy changes beyond decriminalization that are needed to protect economic power for sex workers? I will just leave with saying that decriminalization is different based regionally. So what I might need down in Georgia might be different from what folks need in New York, will be different from folks in Philly. It'd be different depending on your region. And also just to note that we are mostly on the East Coast, but also there are some folks who have lived abroad, who have done work abroad. And so if you want to use that experience to also describe what policy change can look like, that would be really, really helpful. And I will pass it to Zee.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
there was a quick question.
Yes.
They asked for a clarification. Would decriminalization mean full decrim or partial? Sorry, Jenna.
Okay, I can say for myself that full decriminalization, I just want to reference that decriminalization, no matter how we talk about it, often leaves out the language about how it impacts the most marginalized groups. So I would say full decriminalization, but also understanding what full decriminalization looks like to me might not be the same of what full decriminalization looks like for other people. So as we are moving in, maybe Zee can speak to that, and as well as to N'Jaila about what their experiences look like, and if they want to describe what decriminalization looks like for them as well.
So, yeah, so for me, decriminalization, a little more detail. I've worked in multiple places, and I have worked in places where sex work is more criminalized and less criminalized, and that has, while it is often it is often said that reducing the criminal penalties, decriminalization, taking away criminal penalties from sex work is what is needed. It goes a lot further than that, because criminalization of sex work is a sign of much, much deeper and wider societal rot. Particularly the fact that the government and systems and NGOs and institutions go out of their way to make sex work unnecessarily dangerous, unnecessarily risky, unnecessarily just unnecessarily a challenge, whether online, in person, regardless. And it is still the best option for so many people. And that alone is an indictment on our social structures. Decriminalization to me looks like is not just removal of criminal penalties, but removal of the penalties for being who I am. I am disabled, I am an immigrant. And so if decrim does not say that you cannot be deported for doing sex work, that doesn't help me. If that doesn't help people like me, unfortunately that is not a threat to me anymore because I'm repatriated and not for other reasons. But if we are not looking at the welfare system is another way where people are criminalized, where if you're applying for disability, you're scrutinized as though you're scamming, and treating people who are disenfranchised as though they're criminals, whether or not they're sex workers, does continue on to criminalize us who do sex work. I think I'm getting a bit carried away, so I am going to pass over to N'Jaila. I hope that was clear-ish.
Hi, thank you so much. You made some very great points, but I wanted to speak on the fact that even doing sex work that is not criminalized, you still face so many barriers because of stigma, especially when it comes to finance and banking. So I have done a myriad of types of sex work, but when my primary form of work was PSO or phone sex operation, or webcam modeling, those are both legal. But I was finding that many webcam models, when they went to get their checks deposited, were having their accounts flagged and losing their bank accounts, even though they are participating in 100% legal work. So then I moved to having to go to check cashing places, which meant I was getting less of the money that I had earned. So I'd go get my check from webcamming or PSO, go to the check cashing place, lose a fraction of my money, and then put it in my bank account to try to save my bank account from being closed. And then after that, soon the check cashing place wasn't taking the checks from my webcam company. So it was making it so it was easier to actually get money from criminalized for parts of sex work than it was to do it legal, because if you lose your bank account and if you lose a way to prove that you have an income, then now your housing is at risk. Now your economic stability, despite having a job, is now at risk. And doing things like that, where the legal companies that work in legal sex work are criminalized by corporations like MasterCard, who decided that they're going to say how everyone can spend their money because they have deemed sex work too risky. Now suddenly you kind of have a climate where, legal or illegal, we're still facing stigma and barriers that will greatly affect our quality of life. Right now, I'm in North Carolina, where one of the biggest clip and, personal sites, Pornhub, is blocked. If you try to access Pornhub from the state of North Carolina, it is completely blocked to you. So that means all those people who are working legal sex work using Pornhub now will see a decrease in their revenue because entire states of people can no longer access it. And that is not like, making adult films is not criminalized, but we still face a lot of barriers. So yes, we fight for decriminalization, but there are so many stigmas that make it so much easier for sex workers to be discriminated against when it comes to finance, when it comes to housing, when it comes to anything that you need to have a background check to do. Like, why is it that former sex workers are being fired from working at Subway? Why is it that, nurses are being kicked out of their jobs because they also have an OnlyFans? It's not illegal to do those things, but you're still facing discrimination. So it's that it's the societal stigma on top of criminalization, and it's kind of like an intersection, because there's so much stigma because it was criminalized, but it was criminalized first because there was stigma against it. And I will pass that to whoever wants to expand.
I would love to jump in there because thank you both for highlighting all of those things. Liaison Consulting Services was born out of years of providing workshops, lectures, trainings to emerging and established professionals, whether it was, Mount Sinai School of Nursing or Lehman College. And my one sole message has always been compassionate care in health settings, health and legal and social service settings. And it all starts with destigmatization and inherent biases. Now, because I am a current researcher on the Hacking and Hustling Sex Worker Financial Discrimination Project, I cannot speak to my thoughts, feelings. I'm an unbiased researcher. So I'm not gonna I can't delve into the economic discrimination. What I can say as a legal BDSM provider, I have had my income scrutinized when applying for housing, vehicles, and loans. So for me, the most important thing, what's the question asked, Jenna? You did ask the question, but we are clarifying around decriminalization. I don't want to jump into answering the question if we're not ready.
Yeah, so what are the policies? You can answer the question and also talk about what decriminalization looks like for you. But the question is, what are the policy changes beyond decriminalization that we need to protect the economic empowerment for sex workers? So as N'Jaila highlighted, with the OnlyFans checks, like what can that shift so that we can continue to have economic power for sex workers?
That is the perfect segue. So like when we are facing stigmatization, economic stigmatization, discrimination based on source of income, these social determinants, these are parts of social determinants of health. Social determinants of health include economic impact on physical and mental health. Decriminalization would offer the economic freedom to people who are most criminalized and prosecuted, thereby decreasing health-related manifestations of economic disparity and oppression. But beyond decriminalization looks like policy and legislation that protects the rights and health of sex workers. Creating evidence-based health programs, including widespread education about the unique needs of sex workers, would be a great start, right? Like sex workers do have unique health needs. Creating sex worker anti-violence policy would be an amazing start. Quite like civil rights, there's so much more that could be expanded under that umbrella, including anti-discriminatory language, right? If there are policies that create destigmatization, we can create safer healthcare settings, legal processes, and social service settings once we start breaking down that very same stigma that instituted criminalization.
Does anybody else want to add a policy change?
I don't know. This is going to. Okay, so here in Philadelphia, they have what they've done. Instead of like prosecuting you for sex work, they try to get you on like they changed it where it used to be like, if not for sex work, they'll get you for like loitering or trespassing. And then there was like in here in Philly, I can't speak for no other state, or city, I can speak for Philly. They have a bunch of diversion programs, Dawn's Court, and so on, so forth, so fifth. One of the things they could definitely get rid of it. Get rid of it. Throw it out. It doesn't benefit nobody. It benefits nothing. Just like how y'all got rid of, like, okay, we stopped, solicitation and prostitution and stuff like that, because I do BDSM work. I do full service BDSM work. So my job is technically legal, but I have to work out of a photo studio. But depending on my instruments of photography, some of them, like in New York City, acts of insertion could be considered a crime still. Here in Philadelphia, it could be considered as a form of, even though it's consenting, I still run the risk of a charge, like an aggravated assault charge or an assault charge of that category. Ridding out these diversion programs. They don't benefit nobody. They benefit nothing. Agreeing with all of you, especially you, Jay, with removing some of this language that is used. N'Jaila, I totally understand. Now, I did not get checks. I received deposits from like PSO, clip sales. Seeing the fall of Backpage, and around that time of like Backpage being seized by the government, losing my Citizens Bank account because my deposits were cash. I have these sudden spurts of cash deposits, and like, you know, not having a job title, because I find that to be that alone, when opening an account, they want to know, what job do you have? You know, I guess they want to see what kind of money's going to come in. So I think I had mine done as a student or something like that. But losing my Citizens Bank account because of the sudden influx of cash, getting a letter in the mail saying, come pick up a check from this branch, because they don't want to do business with me no more. Losing my phone, my actual phone number, because it was linked to ads. Losing a sex worker comrade of mine's, lost their debt, like their banking account, their checking account, but was still lost their credit card, but was still, oh well, though we don't accept what you do and how you use your money, we still want you to pay this credit card bill. Well, how is my money not good? But my money isn't good, but it's good because y'all want me to pay stuff. So yeah, having access to banking is what could help us. Recognizing that this is actual labor. Standing around looking pretty, that takes work. Having to talk to these people and give a fuck, that's work. Therapists do it. Doctors have to do it. What makes what they do different from what I do? How is it not considered work? Having to buy, like, I'm a 10 plus, I've been doing this since I was 17. So you have an idea. So I'm familiar with street bass, working out the clubs, everything. Buying shoes, buying the good wigs. That is work uniforms. That is a labor cost. That's a cost. This is work. This is cost. Hair cost. Keeping his phone on cost. That is, if I worked at a Costco, I gotta buy work boots. Okay, flick the wig. I saw you. I gotta buy work boots. I have to buy a cutter. I have to, being a doctor, I have to have scrubs. Being, unfortunately, a police officer, I have to have a uniform. Being a teacher, I have to have materials to teach a curriculum. What makes what that is different from what I'm doing? It's all work. And you know, just another thing is what we are all doing here, being a collective organization and representation to show people like this is real. Again, returning to that original statement that Zee made of being deemed value, like a form of less value or valueless. Me being a member of SAFE, being RUA, you being a member of NJ RUA, you being a liaison consultant, you being a member of organization, we like showing that we have flesh, we have blood. Having that, definitely another thing that could, that is beneficial and helpful to this. Ava, please get this link. Oh, okay. Sorry. 1 second. I read something out loud. Sorry. I'm gonna skip for to this with my thoughts. Pardon.
Were you complete, Ava?
Yes. Yes. I'm sorry.
Okay. Does anybody else want to speak to a policy change that they would like to see that's beyond decriminalization? Or we feel complete?
I would like to point out that I would love if North America and Europe would stop exporting their anti-sex work policies to countries that are dependent, that they have made dependent on their aid. That would be great. Also, if the Jay mentioned that destigmatization is a big step towards decriminalization and towards full decrim, because it's not just about policy, it's about ideas and thoughts and action and attitudes. And I find that, especially like in places where I live somewhere where sex tourism is a big source of economic is a big source of economic survival. And so when just as the US has exported its disdain for sex work and sex workers, and just as Europe has done the same with their anti-prostitution loyalty pledge and these different stipulations that they put on their aid, there's also the possibility of starting from home to teach the clients that come from here that, like, again, like, we are people, we are valuable, you value us because you still pay, you negotiate, but you pay, and you keep coming back. So, like, I think that is something that should be prioritized. Also, as a disabled person, I have to plug disability justice here, because sex workers' rights is absolutely a matter of disability justice, it's a matter of immigration policy. Because the more of these intersections that you occupy, the more laws come for you, the more of the laws that come for you. Like, as a disabled person, if I were supposed to decide to, like, I'm not doing sex work, I'm gonna apply for disability, they still treat me like a criminal. They still gotta tell me that I have to be impoverished because you're only allowed to make $1,200 a month on disability. So yeah, like, there's so much tied up in sex workers' rights that to say just sex workers' rights is a big catch-all. It's a big catch-all that it's worth unpacking. That's it.
Yes, so I am so thankful for that. And I do have a quick announcement. The tickets for this particular panel have been sold out, but people can still donate at the Eventbrite link. As we're going through this process, this is how we continue to have these conversations, support our leaders to share their voices, to share their stories. And there's so many other things that happen at Best Practices and all of our different organizations that support the community wellness. So yeah, so I'm going to move forward with the third question. No, fourth question, because we almost there, y'all. And then you all who are listening in can formulate your own questions. I will ask them to the panelists and they can answer as their leisure. I definitely agree with everything that was said. The biggest thing for right now beyond decriminalization is definitely not the arrest to rescue model. That does not work. Human trafficking intervention courts definitely do not support people in the industry in a way that is beneficial. There is so many gray areas between the conversations of what sex work is, and then we talk about the scale of exploitation in that process, because there are people who are exploited through the industry, and we're not negating that those things don't actually happen. What we're saying is that people have autonomy to make a choice about what they do with their bodies and their lives, and therefore doing our due diligence. And also, just to be very clear, a lot of the people who are survivors of human trafficking, sex workers saw them first. We were able to see it first. And so instead of criminalizing us, and or assuming everybody is a victim, we are also the support system for people who have been trafficked, to be able to get to resources and get connected to help. And so just to say that all the other things about the criminalization around human trafficking, about assault, all those things will still be illegal if you decriminalize sex work. So just to add that in there. So now I think it's a perfect segue. So the question is, what demands would you implement for the digital decriminalization of sex work? So to N'Jaila's point around OnlyFans or around Clips for Sale or any of the organizations or any of the other platforms that we utilize, what would be your demands that you would implement to support the decriminalization of sex work? And I saw Ava's hand go up and look real excited. So I'll pass it to Ava.
Bring back Backpage. Bring it back. $20. I was on the front page in the sidebar. Bring it back. Bring it back. Foster Sesta, throw it out. Yes. Texas right now has the same thing North Carolina is facing. If you log into Pornhub.com, you get the notice where it's like, unfortunately, in your state, it's banned. These policies that they're to save the children. Save who from what? Because I can't speak for nobody else. I'm going to speak off my knowledge, my little bit of knowledge. Most of these situations that occur, they come from the calls coming from inside. It's a relative. It's a family friend. Oh, it's the uncle. It's the aunt. It's the person. It's inside. It's not from the internet. Trust me, we all in the same age bubble. We all probably saw the same stuff on these internets, and none of us is doing, we ain't killing and thrilling out here. Some of the stuff was definitely traumatizing, but yeah, it's one of my demands, number one on the map. Y'all heard me. I stand on this hill. Bring back Backpage. Bring back the $2 ads. Bring it back. Rid Foster Sesta. Make work easy again. I can return to. I can do online tutoring on teaching kids how to do quadratic functions. Why? And that's because it's directed to kids, college students, all age brackets. These websites, and even then, when they're like, oh, it's to protect the kids. These kids are smart. Unfortunately, you want to talk about the kids because that's always the talk. Kids are smart. These kids know how to work these devices. They want to see something. They're going to see something. I hate it, but it's the truth. You can't stop everything. You can't prevent, and I hate it because we want to protect. We do want to protect our kids, but again, calls come from inside the house. It's what we see in our neighborhoods. It's what we don't see that's happening in the schools. It's what we do or hear about at the rec centers, stuff like that. It's not from the internet. Definitely not from the internet. I'm just going to again bring back Backpage, and I'm done. Thank you, everybody.
That was amazing. Thank you for the segue. I literally said the same thing, like uberly professional over here. As an early online worker, having online spaces exclusively for sex workers, such as Backpage, allows for increased safety and productivity. Safety looks like being able to have blacklists, like blacklist.com, right? Having blacklist.com for dangerous clients and violent police officers, right? We were able to track abuse from law enforcement within these online sex worker spaces, and many of a violent criminal have been reported by a sex worker to remove them from out of our circle, whether he was a patron, they were a patron at a bar, a club, whether they visited the dungeon, whether they got someone off the street. It doesn't really matter. We created spaces to share that information. So stop taking our websites. Like literally stop. What you can do is block, right? Because I'm totally into tech. I graduated boot camp. I'm not going to sit here and say that I can have I'm not even going to downplay myself. I'm into tech. And at the end of the day, if we don't want children, I'm a mother of 6, grandmother of 7. If I don't want you on a website, you're not getting on the website. Period, point blank. If I can block my children from accessing adult material, I'm sure the government can create policy and legislation that blocks access for children under the age of 18, 21 from accessing these sites the same way you could block Pornhub in Texas. Number one. Number two, having access, these online spaces allow for workers to remain indoors, which is another layer of safety, right? I am chronically ill and disabled, and I don't always center that when I speak about my work, but remaining indoors away from having to walk all night long, because see, I used to work on the track. I am a survivor of domestic trafficking. And I worked on that track till my feet bled in them stilettos because I couldn't get my money any other way. I had a quota to meet every night. And if I wanted to live, I better get that money. I'd much rather be in my hotel on my computer than burning, bleeding feet on the track, right? So like when you took that option for us to say, no, and those who have heard my story, I was a street-based worker experiencing domestic violence, domestic trafficking, but it was in an interpersonal relationship. I thought it was domestic violence. I was a full-time student using the computer to go to school every day, but I was also working online and accepting online payments and stashing my money away and building relationships with submissives who ultimately helped me exit my trafficking situation. That is the importance of having online spaces. So, in my opinion, when it comes to having access to online spaces that are exclusive to sex workers, most importantly, blocked from children, where we can be safe in our work and support each other. This again, it all goes back to social determinants of health for me. It improves mental health outcomes. It greatly improves physical health outcomes, and it helps manage chronic illnesses and disabilities when we have autonomy to decide the modality that best fits our work. I am complete.
Yes. Does anybody else have some
I
demand?
just wanted to add that, so many times sex workers are the canary in the coal mine, and a lot of the loss of digital spaces is a precursor to the loss of, free speech for everyone. Just as quickly as, Pornhub disappeared from several states due to those age verification laws, and FOSTA SESTA and just the sanitizing of the internet, how easy the conversation was to ban an entire app. So whatever you see governments doing to sex workers, you're going to see them doing it to the population at large eventually. So I was not shocked that there's talk about banning TikTok, because they don't want a place where there is a free exchange of ideas, where people can, massively organize to make the changes that they want to see in the world, because that's not in the government's best interests, and they don't want change. So I feel, especially in digital spaces, the removal of sex workers is something that I hope everyone can pay attention to, because it's what's going to eventually happen to all citizens. And the fact that um, they're trying to use this save the children strategy, which usually change to save the family, and then it's, suddenly you can't openly talk about abortion access, you can't talk about one, like, gender nonconformity. Like, it's so easy to look at how laws are affecting sex workers and say, oh well, we're criminals, so obviously we have to be controlled. But if it's so easy to disappear us from the internet, it'll be just as easy to disappear anyone else. And these online spaces, and I've been hoeing for quite a while. I was hoeing on MySpace. Like, I have watched the internet go from um, a, a revolutionary place where sex workers were no longer beholden to a webmaster, and we were more free to make our own websites, collect our own money, and really make safe infrastructure for our work, to a place where we can't even say who we are. On TikTok, you have to say schmex worker or something like that, or corn. Like, our language is now being so over, uh, uh, I guess, monitored, that you know, it's going into, you know, the civilians where now, well, you want to talk about making an abortion fund and you're finding that now your TikTok is banned, or you want to talk about, you know, your gender surgery and now your Twitter is being flagged for being inappropriate. So the protection of our online spaces is going to be the first battleground for the protection of online space and freedom of speech regardless. And I really hope that you know, those who are not sex workers and listening to this talk realize that we are an at-risk population and it is so easy to silence us, but it's not much harder to silence you.
Yes, thank you for that. Does anybody else have any other opinion about the demands? I definitely hear the bring back back page. Some folks also highlighted that they will like the use of credit cards back and not Bitcoin. And so yeah, that was a very, and then to also repeal Sesta Foster. So some of the folks in the Q&A also are very, very much in alignment with that. Is there any other opinions folks would like to share before we move on?
I do want to add that it wasn't just Backpage, right? Like, because we have Redbook, we have Arrows, we have all these other platforms, and they were based on the type of work you did, the modality, whether it was webcam, them, whether it was you were an escort, whether it was, you know, you were a tease and denial specialist, GFE, it really didn't matter. We had multiple platforms. So like as a Dom, I was on the International Dom Directory and MaxFitch and all these other spaces that were exclusively not only just for sex workers, but even segmented by modality, right? So like escorts in an escort space can share information with escorts in this safe space, right? So like for me, I think it, again, I mentioned the umbrella and I was making a very intentional pun. And SW anti-violence policy and legislation would cover the no banning of these, you know, specifically profiled sites for this population, for sex workers. You know, we can't take down their websites. We're not going to stigmatize them in healthcare settings. We're not going to, just like, you know, civil rights protections, it's a big old umbrella that has so much work to be done under it. I really strongly feel that some sort of sex worker anti-violence policy would cover all of the things we're talking about as far as banking, health access, stigma, so on and so forth, and allowing us to have our online spaces. More than just advertising listing spaces.
Yeah. And just wanted to add a little bit more context. Rent Boy was one of the first websites I know that had been taken down, and that people who were operating those websites were also being charged. And I remember us having a conversation about, well, if this is happening to Rent Boy, then we are all going to be in danger of that happening to our websites. And also recognizing that a lot of these forums like Craigslist also had bad date lists on them as well, for us to communicate with one another about staying safe. So it's more beyond just the ability to do work. It's about to do the work, to be safe in those work environments and be able to communicate with one another, because sex work in itself is very isolating. And so when you're not able to connect with your community outside of a virtual space, that also aids to people's unwellness. And so I definitely agree with a lot of the demands that have been stated here. And I understand the personal responsibility as a parent also, who to go and make sure that my children do not have access to a lot of these environments. And so it's a both and approach for me as well. But I definitely say like the ability to use places like Backpage and Craigslist to provide ads that were accessible was also a great way for police to also harm us, because they are also on those websites going through the ads as well. And so it's a both and approach. Like, I agree, I would love to have those websites back. And also criminalization makes it very hard for us to be able to move in our environment safely and without us being monitored or tracked by the police. So um that's definitely something I would add to that conversation. And next is my is the final question before we get to our Q&A. And the audience have been asking really, really insightful questions, and I can't wait to join them into the conversation that we're having. But my favorite question of this all was about allyship. And so what does allyship look like, and what does other movements, keyword movements, are important to help us decriminalize sex work? And so for me, um, I had definitely added that reproductive justice movement in the South is very imperative to the voices of sex workers, often places that we are um, not highlighted in that movement is a problem to me. And so I did my due diligence and my best to inform people who are in the social justice movement, particularly reproductive justice, that sex workers matter too. And all of the issues that you're describing are also things that sex workers experience. And most times I'm one of the only people who are willing to admit my lived experiences. And then I'm also one of a person who looks like I do wanting to admit their experiences in the sex industry. Um, and so my efforts have always been to um, amplify sex work in spaces, particularly about reproductive justice, because reproductive justice isn't just about abortions. It's about a lot of autonomy issues that folks are trying to control. And so as we're having that conversation about sex work, I also highlight our struggles in reproductive justice and how those two intersections cross. For me, sex work is probably 5% of the things that I'm actually trying to talk about in my spaces. Oftentimes I'm talking about inequities, I'm talking about intersectionality, we're talking about racism and capitalism and the lack of resources for folks to have housing and healthcare that's competent. So there's a lot of other things that intersect with sex work, and sex work is like the entry point, if you would say, for us to be able to talk about those things. And so, yeah, just sharing those experiences, especially those who are working across multiple movements, such as HIV work or anything else. Is there anybody who would like to talk about what allyship looks like, in addition to what movements can look like if they included decriminalization for sex work in their agendas? And I'm complete. Anybody can jump in.
I just wanted to jump in really fast because it's I had this is again mentioning this is one of the things I talked about at I spoke at University of Penn at the law school. It was a bunch of up and coming paralegals and and yeah, I did what one of the things to show allyship in even in this aspect is actually like with the work that Jay does, actually pay us, pay us appropriately, actually listen to us, actually respect the work that we do. That is the one definite form of allyship. Correcting language, paying us, like the money moves every cash, cream, baby, cream. And if y'all don't know, some of y'all might be young, but cash rules everything around me. And you got to keep that cream in mind when with us, with because it again, the one thing that I hate, and as a darker sex worker, and not only being Black, being dark, this weird hierarchy of sex work. There's a hierarchy of sex work, which is really weird. But then there's also just in like colorism, the leveling having the same respect for everybody across the board. Not don't pander and that pretend because in some cases allyship is performative and it's real. It's pretty. You can pretty much see it. We can see through that, baby. Work we are I'm not going to say the issues is identical, but they almost are when it comes to reproductive rights in the Northeast. Especially when a person is disabled. Healthcare is definitely another thing. When it comes to disabled sex workers, especially when it's like disabilities that are like disabilities is not always visible, and a lot of disabled, chronically ill, chronic pain sex workers are denied care or given minimum care because, oh, well, I can't see nothing wrong with you. So how is actually something wrong with you? So those are definitely some things that people could do. Utilize your professionalism to actually work with us, to work with us in community. A lot of people want to, like, our organizations that we all are a part of. Everybody wants to join. Oh, how can I be a part? How can I be a part? What can I do? What can I do? You know, you can do more than just be a part. Be a sustained donor. Put in some coin. Again, the cash rules everything. Put in some coin here. We definitely, our work costs. These bills to keep these things afloat cost. You know, that's a little harsh and brash for some folks. Oops. It is what it is. We definitely need always need support and assistance in these spaces to keep them active and live, for us to get from place to place, because a lot of y'all want us places. We can't get there through prayer and good looks. I wish we could back in my heydays. Sometimes a little got me far, but nowadays doing that, I need some Advil. So that's definitely would be important if you have access to lawmakers, because again, this is one of the things I talked about. If you have access to lawmakers you are closely connected to, get us in contact with them. Let's beat the bird in their ear. You did your part. Get us in there. Probably some of our tricks, but we're not going to tell y'all that. Ain't y'all business. But yes, that's another thing that could get us in. What is important to decriminalization. It's building those connections. Help work with us in building those connections. Help work with us with making us more visible than just some legs and a cute face. We like that. That's what keeps us paid. But we need more than that as well. Okay, I'm going to open the floor.
Ava, you keep giving me these segues. Allyship looks like funding movements at the micro level. Thank you. If grassroots organizations and individual leaders had the economic resources to fight our fights, imagine how much more we would be able to do, considering how much we get done without adequate funding. I'm just going to let that sit there for a second. Allyship looks like ensuring that micro initiatives are fully funded through execution. Programs have complete funding, including to compensate participants to promote engagement. Funding individual advocates and leaders. Providing access to resources, like Ava just said. If you could get us in the court to speak to the DA, if you go drinking with the DA on Friday at happy hour, then why am I not drinking with you and the DA at happy hour? Okay, right? Because we have some things to talk about. Now, when I say fully funded, I'm talking about including supportive staff and technology, right? Because like we can give an organization $5,000 and they're like, wow, we want to volunteer, we want to pay our volunteers, or we want to put this towards that program, but we really need to update our technology. And I think that when donors are considering giving, especially larger donors, the totality of the funding is what's most important. Partial funding is great, but saying, hey, listen, this organization is doing this thing and we're interested in fully funding this through execution. We want our name on it too, right? And maybe you don't want your name on it, but maybe you just want to be that ally that advances the movement. Also taking what we're saying here back to your colleagues and coworkers and friends and family, right? Because I speak about the human footprint. I speak about what sort of human footprint do we leave in each other's lives as we go throughout the course of our work. as social service providers, healthcare practitioners, legal providers, as folks who are out here providing services to the sex worker population, what sort of human footprint do you leave in the lives of sex workers during the course of your work? What sort of inherent biases do you personally hold that may show up in your transactions that may leave a human footprint with negative ripple effects? So I implore you to think about how we show up in these movements when we show up in these movements. I'd like to think about, even if I'm not, hey, listen, that was a great panel, but I'm not really interested in getting involved in movements, so on and so forth. But I still, can't shake what they were saying. How can I do something without getting so involved? Be a better professional. Somebody on this panel mentioned that. I don't recall who, because my brain is a bit scattered today with the background noise I'm trying to ignore. But someone mentioned being a better professional sometimes is all that the sex worker population needs you to be. Someone that can hear us. Like Zee said, I am a human. Humanize the experiences, not just take a look at your policies, your guidelines, your procedures, and the number and the case and the blase and the yada. We are people. So in that, I am complete. I know we're short on time.
So I'll just jump in here because there are two things I wanted to point out. So being an ally can two things. One, pay your sex workers and acknowledge that you see sex workers. That is a great act of allyship in saying that you do not believe that sex workers should be stigmatized. The next thing that I think is a big deal is that, and it speaks to the funding, is that there's a lot of funding about to do stuff around sex work, but not funding for sex workers. And people tend not to realize that we are researchers, we are experts, we have been on the ground, we know what we're doing, and we have professionals, we have lawyers, we have doctors, we have teachers, we have educators of all stripes, and all y'all really need to do is put the money where your mouth is, because we got the rest, and we've been got the rest.
Facts. And I saw N'Jaila's hand go up real quick. Got anything to add?
Yeah, Zee really hit it on the head. What I was gonna add, which is allyship is great, but we need we need to step further. We need co-conspirators. We need people who are gonna be in the paint with us. But also, I feel like if you are going to call yourself an ally, you have to recognize that sex workers are the experts in our experience. You can do all the research you want, but we are the primary source of information about sex workers. It's going to come from sex workers. And I run into so many problems with people who really want to help, but they want to only highlight the voices of sex workers that already fit the narrative that they had in their head originally. So I have been, very early in my career as an activist, turned away from panels because, well, I didn't really look like a sex worker to them. I didn't sound like a sex worker to them. When they think about sex work, it's, a very small statured, lighter skinned, very high femme woman. And that is what they're really looking for. Somebody with a sob story, somebody that you could really feel bad for, somebody who you want to save. And we come in all walks of life. There is no one look to a sex worker. There's no one experience to sex work. And you have to respect the experience of the experts, which is us. And a lot of times, I would love if people who call themselves allies to sex workers let go of their preconceived notions of sex work, let go of their expectations of this perfect victim who has a sob story that is going to make you feel like a better person for having saved them. We do not want to be saved. You know, hashtag not your rescue project. We are intelligent, capable human beings who are advocating for the rights we are owed being human beings. We want our human rights, we want labor rights, and we want to stop having our existence criminalized. So that was what I had to add.
Thank you, N'Jaila. That was actually a perfect segue to having this discussion. And I just want to say that, yeah, we have been saving ourselves for a very long time. And out of all of the experiences that I have in many communities that I work with, the sex worker community has been by far the most helpful, the most consistent, the most willing to show up in times of needs. Like, this is a community like any other that I've experienced. And so I just want to state that for the record. I don't know, Ava, if you had anything you wanted to say related to this question. But we do have about 4 minutes before I will I will ask the questions that are in the Q&A. So if any final words that you want to give, and please also put your contact information in the chat, and also if you want to share where people can follow you at and be able to track your journey or anything that you're working on, this would be a good time to say that as well. And then I will close it out and then open the Q&A. So I pass it.
I was just gonna piggyback what N'Jaila said, and we don't need a captain save a hoe at all. We're good. Don't save her. She don't want to be saved because we don't need it. We don't need it. We're not victims. That's that preconceived notion of, oh well, they're in really fast. And in my work in Project Safe, there is resources to rehab that were denied to a few of our members that were seeking rehab because in the application process, they weren't going to accept you if you weren't a sex traffic victim. One of the applications was like, did you have a pimp? Were you sex trafficked? Please tell us your sex trafficking story. And one of our members was like, I've never been sex trafficked. I just was doing drugs and now I'm on the street and I'm trying to get off drugs. And they denied her because you weren't sucking for drugs. Can't take you. So yes, it gotta go. It gotta go. If that just toss it, see that trash over there, throw it in there, put it there, babe.
All right, awesome. So we're gonna close out, and we can order. You all can follow me on Poetic Glitter Hearts. I'll put it out in the chat as well. I do poetry. I usually are teaching writing workshops for people in the industry, to be able to share their stories that are amplifying their power. And then I'm also part of Best Practices Policy Project, Lissa Strada Mutual Care Collective, Rouge Support Network. I have my own consulting business at I Am Jenna Torres. So I blend arts and artivism to be able to communicate with communities who maybe not had access or exposure to somebody who is a sex worker and a mom and everything else that goes under the sun. So I definitely encourage you all to allyship looks like supporting your local sex worker organizing, wherever that might be. A lot of us are also people who work in public health, a lot of people who are serving our communities, who are trying to just make the world a better place for us to live in. And I will send it to Zee.
So wait, am I just giving my information or is that what we're doing?
Yes, and any last thoughts you have?
Okay. So my website is coming, zeezamaica.com. Give me a few weeks, but in the meantime, you can follow me on Instagram. I am not particularly active there, but if you need to reach me, that is a good way to do so. Z_off_X. And my final thoughts would be sex workers. I'm gonna let this stew for a second. Yeah, I'm gonna let this stew because yeah, I'll pass to the next.
Anybody wants to find me, all of my contact information is on my URL, which is www.avakane.com. You can find my Twitter, my Instagram. You can find my ad. You want to do some phone sex? It's on there. $2.99 a minute. My final thoughts. I just saw this because I was being nosy. I looked at the Q&A. Somebody put, they're always looking for the perfect victim. We're not that. We are not that. Pay your local hoe. Thank you. That's all.
Oh my God, I love you. I'm gonna try to save up some coins and be one of your newest clients. What if you don't stop it, girlie? So I dropped it in the chat. Hopefully we can get it out to the public. I'm also my link tree is the easiest way. Like it has my socials on LCS. Excuse me, I'm sorry. On Instagram, it's LCS_JAY/JAE. I am most easily like if you just drop a line to Lista Strata Mutual Care Collective and Fund, or if you go to rougesupportnetwork.com, or are we .com or .org, Jenna? I don't know. .com. If you go to our website, you know, we can always be contacted through either organization if you don't reach me through DM, because to be honest, I just don't check DMs that much. But my link tree has all the information about me. There's my socials button. You can just click that, follow me. And since I said that in this meeting, I will check my DMs more often.
Can I just jump in for a sec? Because this is something that I have not that I don't think has come up yet. The Kids Online Safety Act. SESTA FOSTA 2.0 is how someone referred to it, and after reading some of the summaries of it, it's currently in Congress, and it's back, and it's basically grown out of the leaks, the Facebook leaks that talked about the impact on young people, and it's grown into this like anti-trans, anti-dissent, anti-Black people, like anti everything that is not cis, straight, white, government aligned. And it looks on the face, as always, it looks harmless. It looks like it's a good idea to save the kids. But yeah, I think that was definitely not on my radar until about like a few days ago. So I want it to be on others' radar. Also, sex workers harm reduction. And I just want to say that. Thank you. That's my thought.
Yes. Ooh, yes, N'Jaila, if you want to share your last thought and share your social media, that'd be awesome.
Oh. Again,
Oh,
N'Jaila.
you already shared. If you
Oh.
already started, share your stuff.
Oh, well, I did put NJ Rua's website in there. If you want to follow me personally, I'm at Blasian bitch with a Y, on all social media, and I'm on all the big ones. And I also have a Patreon, which I'm trying to start up, which will help me do the work that I'm doing. So please follow me on the socials and you can get more info on not just my activism. I'm also a writer, and I'll be sharing more about that in the future.
Yes. Is that PJ or Erica?
Hey, this is PJ. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I am sorry, dear panelists. When you sent out your contact details, they just went to ourselves, to panelists and host and panelists. So no one out there in every person land could see them. So I forwarded them, and I'm sorry, Ava, I made a mistake in your.com, but it has been fixed and I deleted that one. So it is the avakeen.com. So that's why you're getting everyone's contact details from me, because when you just send it out to hosts and panelists, I think it's just us that can see it. So you got to send it to everyone.
Awesome. Awesome. So thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Just trying to help out here.
Yes, thank you so much for your assistance. We have 17 questions. I'm going to ask a few for the sake of time. We have about 25 minutes. So if you don't want to answer the question, you can feel free to skip it. So some of the questions I think are really interesting is if we could speak on the restrictions on banking, targeted trafficking instead of blocking sex workers from using their credit cards to browse ads. Is there anybody who wants to speak on the restrictions on banking? I think Ava is the one who might have mentioned it.
So wait, the question was, can you speak of restrictions on banking targeted to call strike? Yeah, no, they're just closing your accounts. So I don't there's like no restriction. You just one day will either get a letter in the mail or you're out buying groceries and you go to swipe your card and it's like declined. You go to log into the app and you see that your account's closed. And the pattern that was presented around the time of the FOSTA SESTA, about like how to look out for this. It was like people who book hotels, like their credit cards is just to book hotels, travel, and like department store purchases, like beauty products. Those were some of the flags that were for some people, and that was kind of publicly talked about. That were publicly talked about regarding like how to detect if they're about like how to tell a sex trafficking victim. And the craziest thing is trafficking is more than just like trafficking. Human trafficking is more than just a person being sold into sex work. Trafficking is if you want to talk about it, is like green card fraud, with people getting like a regular 9-to-5 job. Like rather than getting a 9-to-5 job, they're working at restaurants, they're working at salons. They don't have no licenses. They came in a visitor's visa, a student visa, or people that came in on, oh bless your heart, thank you for this coffee, praise. Student visa, a visitor's visa, or people who got a ticket. But people who got like a ticket to fly in but never got a ticket to fly back out, and they're working under the table. Those are technically forms of trafficking. Or like there is a law office here in the Pennsylvania area, Elkins Park, to be specific. That attorney was committing green card fraud, and he was doing a form of trafficking where he was basically give me some money, and by the time they touch into America, I already got like fake pay stubs and stuff generated for them, and that's trafficking. Like, so yeah, it's just because they hate whores. They love to pay us and get service by us, but on the surface, they hate us. It's weird.
I would also like to use this opportunity as a segue that if you would like more clarity on the deconflation of sex work and sex trafficking, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or Jenna, who are both self-identified survivors of trafficking and identified by New York State District Attorney's Office. We have both navigated the human trafficking intervention courts and the diversion programs, and we both entered the trades as a youth. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out and retain our services. Shameless plug.
Thank you for that. I see Z wants to answer also.
Yeah, I just want to, just real quick, a form of trafficking that I don't see anybody calling trafficking or being mad about for the right reasons is moving migrants who come across the border from the border or from border cities to states that have temperatures that many of them have never even experienced, and then these and states that are not prepared for them, states that they did not want to go to, states they have no connections to. That is trafficking. That seems to be government sanctioned trafficking, and that needs a lot more conversation because nobody's calling it that.
Yeah, ACS and all of the babies who were living with HIV who were getting put into foster care during the early 90s. So, I mean, there's a lot of institutions that are not trafficking. Um, so yeah, so thank you for all of that. There is a couple of questions in here that are related to as we focus on advocating for full decriminalization, what are additional measures and policy initiatives are required to establish legal frameworks safeguarding sex workers beyond simply ceasing to penalize sex workers and their clients? Um, yeah, I want to say, and I think that has been said in a couple of other spaces, I don't truly believe that sex work will ever be fully decriminalized. At least if it is, it will never be to the benefit of people who are most marginalized. They're always looking for ways to criminalize the Black body, people of color body. And so I feel like there's just going to be another iteration of whatever they decide to come up with next. Um, but there is no legal framework for that. It's decriminalization, period. And people should be able to work and have autonomy over their bodies. I do also see N'Jaila would like to answer and PJ would like to answer. And so I will pass it to N'Jaila first.
What I would really love to see happen is in especially in the US, I would love to see sex workers becoming a protected class because we are a group that is so highly stigmatized and marginalized. And I think putting us under the umbrella of a protected class would save us from housing discrimination, from being discriminated against in like family courts, um, making sure that our rights are recognized. So that is one thing I would love to see, even though I know it would be a very long, very arduous fight. And also, as a person of color, I know that being in a protective class does not ensure that you're going to be protected. You have instances like the Crown Act that had to be passed. So, discrimination based on hair and because of your ethnicity wasn't going to happen, but we still have jobs saying, well, you need to be professional and that means your hair has to do X, Y, and Z. That's still discriminatory. So as much as I completely understand that that's not a end all solution to discrimination, I do think it would at least give some type of framework for acknowledging the stigma that sex workers go through and also starting to remedy it in ways that, a sex worker could say, oh, I was going for a job and, StreamMate came back in my background check and they rescinded the job offer. And I feel like that was discriminatory because I was qualified for the job and I didn't get the job because of my past work. Hopefully, if we are a protected class, so that person can say, I was discriminated against and I can have a case to remedy it. So yes, that would be one of the things I would say.
This is PJ. I didn't want to answer a question. I just wanted to shout out to our long-suffering audience that I have now made it possible for you to chat. Zoom does weird things from time to time. It's been a little while since we've been on a webinar. So I didn't realize that the chat was blocked for everyone, including panelists who could only talk with each other. But now everyone can talk to everyone. And
Yay.
I have attempted, yay, and I have attempted to move anything that the panelists put just talking to each other. I moved it to everyone. And I see that people bravely put their comments in the Q&A because they couldn't chat. So I'll read a few of them. I mean, someone had said it was an amazing panel. Let me look at the answered ones. Hang on. Someone asked if it will be recorded. We said yes. Someone said, thank you all. This was amazing. And then there are many other questions to be asked. Just noting that now everyone can chat to everyone. And when you're ready, Madam Chair, if anyone from the audience would like to speak, I can make that so, I believe, not 100% sure, but only if you want to have that option. That's all from me for tech.
Thank you. There's quite a bit of comments in the questions. I mean, questions in the Q&A. And so I will work my way through the list, and we have about 15 minutes left of this panel. And so if we get through the questions and there is somebody who wants to have a comment or question less about your concerns, you can definitely add them here. But I see a few that I think will be interesting for us to answer. And so we have one that is about I just saw it. Oh, okay. Can we talk? Okay. The euphemisms required for YouTube is ridiculous too. Are you concerned about crackdown on sex workers' content on things like Twitter or X, which have previously allowed some adult content in contrast to other platforms?
As a person who's on Tumblr, yes, I am quite concerned about the future of digital content for sex workers. If any of you guys who are in the viewers and panelists, y'all remember the days of Tumblr, you could post whatever, then Verizon, no, then they sold it to Yahoo or Verizon, I think Verizon first, then Yahoo. And then it was like, nope. And anything and everything that deemed sexual, even if it was artistic, was taken down. Quite a few of us had a little stream of income because we was able to market some of our material and even services on there, and that was taken away. X, Twitter, I'm sorry, I'm going to, out of all times in my life, I think this is the one time I'm going to accept dead naming. Twitter is, I'm not calling it X, which I find to be humorous because now Twitter wants to have a video service, which again, like sex workers, a lot of sex workers accounts have been compromised or closed because they had their service link on there, like their Tryst, those kind of things. Some of them have lost their accounts because of that. So I do see a feature of like possibly that also be like other people's accounts closing. Now Twitter wants to have a video streaming service, which I find to be comedic because what are you going to call yourself, Xvids? Whoa, I think Xvids is already a site. So what's about, is it Uchiwali or is it one Mike? Total help me sing. What's about to happen here, Twitter? But I do think I really think there's like a lot that's going to start taking place, and I'm fearful of it. I'm not saying it out of excitement. I'm saying this out of sheer fear as a current ongoing sex worker, digital and in person, and for other sex workers who are digital. Sorry, I'm done.
Thank you for answering that question. Yeah, I had to make sure my toddler was not being a toddler, and she is successfully occupied. Yeah, so thank you for answering that. N'Jaila, do you also want to hop in and put some thought to it?
I think I touched on it a little bit before when I was talking about the loss of digital spaces and censorship and how that's so dangerous. But I also wanted to include that not only are we losing safe digital spaces, but the digital spaces that we do have have become more dangerous in and of themselves. As somebody who was a very early adapter to Twitter and was on Tumblr, I'm chronically online, unfortunately. But I saw what happened on MySpace, where a super right-wing billionaire bought it to try to move everybody to the right and clogged it with ads everybody hated, and decided to save money by getting rid of moderators, making the site unusable. It's so weird that that's happening twice, but it's a very hostile place to be an out sex worker on the internet. It's when I get like death threats or somebody saying that they're going to rape me and I report it to Facebook, I'm constantly told that, you know, uh, they didn't violate the terms of service, but I could post an article about how sex workers are especially being harmed by the slow reaction to COVID. And I was told that was a TOS violation. Yeah, on Twitter, you can out a sex worker and dox us, and you don't lose your account. But if somebody says, oh, this is the Nazi who has been harassing multiple users, they are staying online. So having an online space and being safe is not synonymous, but I still feel I would rather have a space and be completely silenced.
Thank you for that, N'Jaila. Erika, is that your hand up? Maybe. Maybe not. Did anybody else want to jump in on this conversation? We have a couple of more questions that are in the same vein of each other. I'd be needing my glasses, y'all. Is there, so the two questions that kind of go together, is there any sex work that would work in capitalistic society if it was decriminalized? And does that, and is sex work inherently anti-capitalist? And then the other question that's kind of in the same framework is, sex workers don't need saving. What do you have to say to people who say sex work isn't work, that people do this as a choice or do as a choice? Sex work isn't work that people do as a choice, and do they need so they do need saving. What do you say to people who are anti-sex work?
I want to jump in right away. I want that. I need that, because I said this at a conference, and this is where I love my Jenna. I entered the trades at 14 years old. At 14 years old, excuse the background on this Brooklyn apartment. At 14 years old, I was already a mother. At 15, I had 2 children. At 16, I had 3 children. Totally my choice. Nobody's responsible for that but me. Maybe, maybe not. That's debatable. I was a child, right? A minor. And as a 14-year-old, who was hiring me? I didn't have a high school diploma. I didn't have working papers. So where was I going to get income for my newborn? When I was 15, without working papers or a high school diploma, who was I hiring? How was I supporting myself and my child? Right? So like, I entered the trades at 14 years old, first street based, but then I got a fake ID and I was dancing 42nd Street. And I went from dancing 42nd Street to escorting, black car escorting, like around Manhattan. And I did these things while wishing I could be in high school, but I couldn't. I had to work, right? Like, because I had to pay rent, because like I had children that I had to buy stuff for, and I had to eat, and I didn't have any parents. So like, that's just my story. It was always survival works for me, but where were my options though? Where were my options for self-sustainability as a youth, an undomiciled youth without parents who happened to be a parent? I finally got a job at Burger King. I was 21 years old. And I was dancing at a club called the Pussycat Lounge down on Rector Street in the financial district here in Manhattan. So even I had to get a job at Burger King because, like, to be fair, I'm a mom, right? I have to have a regular job, right? I was getting $5.25 an hour at Burger King from 8 p.m. to midnight to get up to go to school in the morning, deal with my kid, and I worked the lunch hours at the strip club. So I made so much more money at this club that wasn't work. I'm on my feet for a full shift. And at the time, I was paid by check. My manager cut out checks every week. The only thing we got in cash was the tips that they left at the bar for when we were drinking. So I got a paycheck. And that paycheck still didn't qualify me to be a working mother. Burger King did. So I say it is subjective, it is circumstantial, and it is individualized. And that is why blanketed sweeping legislations cause harm. I am complete.
Yes.
Oh, can I jump in and say that sex work has worked in capitalist societies, but also sex work was here before capitalism and it's going to be here afterwards. I don't really know if it's even productive to try to view sex work as something that is inherently anti-capitalist or not, but you know, work is not inherently capitalist and we are just workers. You never say like, oh, that person was doing survival corporate marketing. But, you know, when I graduated from college and got, you know, the first sit down email office job, I felt way more disrespected by that corporate marketing job than I ever did in the sex work that I had chosen to do. If you've ever been in a position where you are being treated unfairly for a job and you're not advocating for yourself because you know that job is linked to your health care, which you need to survive, and the food you eat that you need to survive, like, how is that not survival working? But we don't have survival doctors or survival retail workers. They only say, oh, it's survival sex workers, but you are working those jobs because you need to survive, because in our society we have a cost of living. Just to breathe and participate in society, there is a base amount that you need to earn to do that. So to ask what is sex work's role in capitalism, it's work like anything else. It's work. So I think it's work that should be decriminalized because it's criminalized based solely on controlling bodies of the marginalized. And I would hope in a post-capitalist society that this, you know, kind of global white supremacist patriarchy would also be abolished with that. So then there won't be this super restrictive force that wants to tell me what to do with my body. So that is, I hope that I answered that question about sex work, anti-capitalism, and post-capitalist society.
I saw Zee has some thoughts to share, and then we're gonna close out. I want to thank all of my panelists for being here. I want to thank Best Practices Policy Project. So Zee, if you feel comfortable jumping in, and then we'll close out.
Yeah, N'Jaila, you hit it before I did. That we all work under constraints. I was a survival worker in corporate America, and it landed me in the hospital 5 fucking times before I stopped. And I cannot go back. And sex work has never landed me in the hospital. So yeah, save me from the insurance company that is making it impossible for me to access healthcare. Save me from the insurance company who exploited my labor for a year and a half and didn't pay me overtime when I was working 70-hour weeks, save me from that. I will accept savior. I will accept being saved from that, but I do not need to be saved from my decisions.
So I am so thankful. I think that is the perfect note to end out on. Yeah, come save me from my 9 to 5 because it sucks over here deeply. Oh, woe is me. What will I ever do? Yeah, absolutely. Please save us from that. But I want to thank all of the participants from asking your amazing questions. If there was any question I was unable to get to, I will confer with the wonderful people on this panel if they want to have some access or some resolve with that. And so that we can get it out to you all. Thank you so much, Best Practices, and I'm so excited that we're able to be here and present. Please follow us on social media. Please please donate to your local sex worker organizer, and also to Best Practices, who makes it possible for us to continue to work together in collaboration. And also, if you are somebody in the industry and want to come to a writing workshop, follow us so that you can hear more about future updates. So yes, PJ, Erica, is there anything all you want to end off on? And thank you so much, Erica and PJ, for supporting with tech and everything else to make sure that the are able to join you all. So I want to make sure I end on time and respect people's time and energy. If there's any
Thanks so much, Jenna. Thank you. And I don't know where Erica is. Erica might pop in, but it's been great. Sorry if there was any bumpiness at all. We're trying our hardest, but I don't think we did terribly.
Yes. So
Erica, you here?
Our handles again verbally. Mine is at Poetic Glitter Heart. Glitter, like the stuff that you spread all over the place that rings joy, maybe. Poetic Glitter Heart. And Zee, if you would like to share your Instagram handle again.
Yes, that is ZEE_off_X. I am also a researcher, not early career, but still. And I am a writer, a little later career in that. But yeah, reach out to me and let's chat.
I had put in the comment section because I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Blue Sky. That's something new nowadays. But you can find me www.theavakane.com. I'm on Twitter at Dominatrix Kane. I'm on Instagram as Yes Miss Ava. Shit, I'm on FetLife, Ava Kane. You send me a message there, I'll respond. Also, I really want to hone in and focus on my organization that I'm a part of here in Philly, Project Safe. Philadelphia Project Safe. That is literally my lifeline. Those are my folks. I love what I do. I love the people I work with. Those are my comrades. Fuck a swerve, fuck a turf, fuck the police. Let me shut up. All right.
Ava, I'm coming up to Project Safe. That's it. That's all. You said it all. I'm coming up there.
You're muted, Jenna.
Really? Say it again, Jenna.
I was just saying, folks also have put their contact information in the chat as well. So thank you so much for that. And then, yeah, Jay.
No, I was going to say my information is in the chat, really simple, on Twitter, aka X, or Instagram, or even Facebook if you're an older Facebook user. It's at LCS_JAYJAE. Again, it's at LCS_JAYJAE. You want to shoot me an email, consultingwithj@outlook.com. And usually where you can find Jenna, you can find me if you could find her.
N'Jaila, do you want to add your stuff verbally?
Someone
Oh,
said, Jenna, what is your Twitter? But it's at Poetic Glitter. Oh, no. What is your Twitter?
It's probably Poetic Glitter or just Poetic Glitter, no heart, but I think it's the same.
Yeah, I think it's Poetic Glitter. Yeah. So I am just going to take screenshots of all the questions in case we missed anything and try our best to answer things. I think I took all the screenshots. I don't know if the Q&A saves. Is there a way to save it? Let me see. I don't know. I took screenshots. All right. I shall sign off if that is okay with you.
That's fine. Thank you.
Bye.
N'Jaila, put your stuff. You can.
Oh, I put everything in the chat, but like I said before, at Blasian Bitch with a Y, on all the social medias, and NJ Rua. You can find all our social media on our site, which is www.njrua.com. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated this great conversation.
Thank you. Thank
See
you.
you all on the red carpet.
Yes, I want to give a special thanks to Zee who helped me. We co-facilitated these questions and this whole panel that were brought today. I was the moderator for these panels, but I thank you, Zee, for supporting me through this process and just getting it done. And so yeah, and thank you to CSW for helping us get our parallel event up. So if there's any additional questions, any thoughts, processes, feelings, you're gonna have to wait until next time you see us because we out of time. But please follow us and as I said, send monies our way so that we can continue being great in these spaces. And we're complete. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful day.